black roses were sent to a Mafia boss, unaware he'd hunt down a single mom the next day. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to our main characters. It was a rainy night in Manhattan, the kind of night when the streets gleamed under the streetlights, slick with the constant downpour. In the middle of it all, Sarah Miller, a single mother of two, sat at her small kitchen table, glancing at the flowers that had arrived unexpectedly. Black roses. They were wrapped in a simple black ribbon, the note attached, but the message was nothing more than a single line. For what's to come. She frowned, unsure of their meaning. She had no idea who would send her flowers, let alone black ones. It was a mystery that gnawed at her, but there was no time for her to dwell on it. The evening had been long, her kids were asleep, and the day had drained her. She set the flowers aside, trying to shake off the eerie feeling they left behind. Meanwhile, across town, Jack Romano sat in his penthouse, a glass of scotch in hand as he read over the latest reports. His mind was elsewhere, though, distracted by the gift that had arrived at his doorstep earlier that evening. Black roses. He didn't believe in coincidences, and he certainly didn't think these roses were a random gesture. They had come with a message. The one who heard your secret. His thoughts wandered. He could feel the pull of something much bigger than his business dealings, something dark. His world was one where power was everything, and he knew that anyone who tried to cross it would be dealt with swiftly. But this time, these roses, these messages, had him intrigued. Sarah, though, had no idea she was already tangled in Jack's web. She thought her life was simple. Care for her children, get through the days, pay bills, and survive. But the roses, the mysterious message, and the strange sense of something shifting in her life, it was all just the beginning. Jack was already on his way. He was always watching, always calculating. Sarah Miller had just become the next piece in his world, whether she liked it or not. And tomorrow, everything was going to change. The next day, Sarah woke up to the sound of her children playing in the living room. It was the usual morning chaos. She rubbed her eyes, feeling the weight of exhaustion from the sleepless night before. Her phone buzzed with a new message, but she didn't have time to check it. The kids needed breakfast, and the day had to start, even though she still felt the unease from the black roses the night before. She tried to brush it off, convincing herself that it was just a strange coincidence, a prank, maybe. But there was a nagging feeling that wouldn't let go. She had no idea that across the city, Jack Romano was already moving toward her, orchestrating the next steps in a game he'd been playing long before she even received those flowers. Jack was a man who dealt in power, and everything he did was calculated. The roses were his first move, a subtle warning, a sign that he was watching. As he stood in his office, overlooking the city, he thought about Sarah. The mystery of the single mother had caught his attention, but it wasn't just her life he was interested in. It was the message, the way she had unwittingly stepped into his world without even knowing it. Jack was used to getting what he wanted, and Sarah, whether she liked it or not, was now part of his plan. As he arranged his schedule, Jack's thoughts were sharp, focused. He had an appointment to attend later that day, but something about Sarah lingered in his mind. He didn't like loose ends. He never left anything to chance. Sarah's life, with its simplicity and routine, would be turned upside down in ways she couldn't imagine. At noon, Sarah took the kids to the park, trying to shake off the sense of foreboding that had followed her all morning. She couldn't help but glance over her shoulder now and then, the sound of distant footsteps making her heart race for no reason at all. She didn't understand why, but her instincts were telling her something was wrong. As they passed a row of trees near the entrance of the park, she noticed a black car parked by the curb. The tint on the windows was too dark for her to see who was inside, but there was something about the car that made her uneasy. She shook the thought from her mind. It was probably nothing. She was just being paranoid. The next moment, she was distracted by the laughter of her children, but she couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't alone. Across the street, a man in a tailored suit stepped out of the car, his eyes hidden by dark sunglasses. He looked in her direction for a brief moment before turning and walking into the park, his stride purposeful, controlled. Sarah didn't know it yet, but that man, Jack Romano's trusted associate, was now following her every move, ready to report back to his boss. Jack was always one step ahead. Sarah's world was about to collide with his in ways she couldn't foresee. But she would learn soon enough, as everything she knew would change that very day. The park was quieter now, the sun higher in the sky as Sarah sat on a bench, watching her children play on the swings. The weight on her chest hadn't eased, and the feeling of being watched was still there, nagging at her. She tried to shake it off, focusing on the laughter of her kids as they enjoyed the rare sunny afternoon. But her peace was fleeting. She glanced up once more and saw the man in the suit again, standing by the park entrance, just outside the gates. His posture was rigid, as though he was waiting for something, or someone. She quickly looked away, not wanting to make eye contact, but her heart began to race. There was something unsettling about him, but she couldn't pinpoint why. The kids had moved on to the sandbox, their attention now focused on building imaginary castles, and Sarah let herself relax just a little. But that feeling of being followed never quite left her. Unbeknownst to her, the man had been sent by Jack Romano, tasked with ensuring that she stayed within his sight. Jack's world was built on control and surveillance. He never took risks, and he certainly didn't let anything slip through his fingers. It wasn't long before his associate received the signal. It was time to make his move. As Sarah was about to leave the park, the man in the suit approached her, his footsteps soft against the gravel path. His expression was neutral, but there was an unmistakable authority in his demeanor. "Ms. Miller, I have a message for you," he said, his voice smooth but firm. Sarah froze, her body tensing as she turned to face him. Her instincts screamed for her to walk away, to keep moving, but she was caught off guard. "What message?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady, though the unease was clear in her eyes. The man didn't flinch. "Mr. Romano would like to speak with you," he said, his tone almost matter-of-fact. "He'll be expecting you." Sarah's heart skipped a beat. Jack Romano. She'd heard of him, of course. Who hadn't? The rumors about his ruthless business dealings, the whispers of his influence stretching far and wide. She didn't know what he wanted with her, but she had no doubt that it wasn't something she could easily walk away from. "I'm not interested," she replied, her voice more confident than she felt. The man didn't react. Instead, he simply handed her a card, black, simple, with just a phone number printed in gold. "Call him when you're ready," he said, before turning and walking away. Sarah watched him go, her hand still holding the card, the weight of the situation settling in. Her instincts told her to rip it up, to ignore the entire thing. But deep down, she knew she wouldn't. She couldn't. Something about the situation tugged at her, pulled her into a world she wasn't prepared for, a world she didn't belong in. She stared at the card for a moment longer before slipping it into her pocket. She had no choice but to deal with this. The day was far from over, and she had no idea that by the time the sun set, her life would be changed forever. The night had fallen by the time Sarah found herself standing in front of a sleek, black car parked just outside her apartment building. She had spent hours deliberating whether to call Jack Romano or not. The card he had sent her felt heavier in her pocket with each passing minute. Despite her resolve to ignore it, something about the whole situation made her feel like there was no turning back. The mysteries surrounding the black roses, the enigmatic man in the park, and now this summons from Jack Romano were all starting to connect in ways she couldn't quite understand. She had a life, a routine, a purpose. She wasn't supposed to be involved in this. She was just a single mother trying to make ends meet. But here she was, drawn into a world she had only ever heard whispers about. Sarah stood there for a moment, her hand resting on the car door handle, as the cold night air wrapped around her. She could hear the distant hum of the city, people living their lives, unaware of the dangerous dance she was about to step into. After a deep breath, she opened the door and slid into the back seat of the car. The driver, a tall man in a dark suit, gave her a polite nod, not speaking a word. He simply drove. The city passed by in a blur, the lights of Manhattan flashing as they headed further from Sarah's familiar world. The further they went, the more her heart raced, the weight of her decision settling in her chest. She had no idea where they were going or what was waiting for her. But as the car made its way through the city, Sarah couldn't help but feel an overwhelming sense of unease. It was as if she was crossing some invisible line, and there was no going back. After what felt like an eternity, the car finally stopped. Sarah looked out the window and saw the towering gates of a mansion, its lights casting a golden glow against the dark night. The driver opened the door for her, and Sarah hesitated for a moment before stepping out. As she walked toward the entrance, her mind raced with questions. What did Jack Romano want with her? What was this world she had stepped into? The doors opened before she could knock, and she was greeted by another man in a suit, his expression unreadable. He didn't say a word as he ushered her inside. The interior of the mansion was grand, with marble floors and high ceilings that seemed to stretch endlessly. The opulence of it all took Sarah's breath away. It was like stepping into another world, one where she didn't belong. But she couldn't leave now. Not after everything that had happened. She followed the man down a long corridor, her footsteps echoing in the vast space. At the end of the hall, a door opened, revealing a dimly lit room. And there, standing in the center, was Jack Romano. He was just as she had imagined, tall, confident, his dark eyes studying her with a cool, calculating gaze. "Sarah," he said, his voice smooth and commanding, "I'm glad you came." His words sent a chill down her spine, but she forced herself to meet his gaze. This was it. There was no turning back now. "What do you want from me?" she asked, her voice steady, though her heart was racing. Jack's lips curled into a slight smile. "I'm not here to ask for anything. I just wanted to talk." He motioned to the chair across from him. "Please sit." Sarah took a deep breath and slowly sat down. She had no idea what kind of conversation was about to unfold, but one thing was clear. Her life was about to change forever. As Sarah sat across from Jack, the weight of the situation pressed down on her shoulders. The vast, luxurious room seemed to close in around her, the walls lined with dark, polished wood and expensive art. Jack's gaze remained fixed on her, his expression unreadable. She could feel the tension in the air, the power radiating from him in a way she hadn't experienced before. It was a different kind of presence, one that didn't need to be loud or brash to make an impact. His mere existence in the room commanded attention. "I'm not sure why I'm here," Sarah said, her voice steady, though her heart pounded in her chest. Jack's lips curled into a smile, but it was cold, distant. "You're here because I wanted to talk," he said, his voice smooth, with a hint of something that she couldn't quite place. "You've been on my radar for a while, Sarah. Your resilience, your ability to survive. Those are things I respect." She frowned, trying to make sense of his words. "What does that have to do with me? I'm just a single mother trying to make a life for myself and my kids." Jack leaned forward, his gaze intensifying. "You're more than that. You've already stepped into my world without realizing it. Whether you like it or not, you're now part of it." Sarah swallowed hard. The fear she had been trying to ignore began to creep in. "I don't belong here. I don't want to be a part of your world." Jack's smile faded, but there was still a quiet amusement in his eyes. "That's not really up to you, Sarah," he replied, his voice low. "You see, in my world, people don't just leave once they're in. And you, my dear, have made yourself indispensable without even knowing it." Sarah's mind raced. What was he talking about? How could she have become indispensable to someone like him? She had barely even spoken to him, let alone done anything to earn his attention. "What do you want from me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Jack's expression softened just slightly. "I want to offer you protection, Sarah. I want to give you a way out of the life you've been struggling through." His words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. "Protection from what?" she asked, her skepticism rising. "From the world outside?" Jack answered. "From the people who would prey on someone like you. From those who see you as weak, as vulnerable." He paused, letting the silence stretch between them. "You're not weak, Sarah. You're strong. And that's exactly why I'm offering you my help." Sarah shook her head, not fully understanding. "I don't need your help. I've been managing just fine on my own." Jack's gaze never wavered. "Have you? You've been managing, yes. But for how long? How long before someone takes advantage of that strength you're so proud of?" Sarah's breath caught in her throat. The reality of the situation began to sink in. She was in a room with a man who controlled more than she could ever imagine, and he was offering her something she didn't know how to refuse. She had always thought that she could protect herself, that she didn't need anyone else. But now, faced with Jack's presence, she realized how little she truly knew about the world he inhabited. He was right in one thing. Her life, her choices, they had already been shaped by forces she didn't fully understand. "I don't know what you want from me," she said quietly. "But I'm not sure I can trust you." Jack's smile returned, but this time it seemed more genuine, almost tender. "You don't have to trust me right now, Sarah. But you will. Because in this world, trust is earned, and I'll earn it." Slowly but surely. He stood up and walked over to the window, looking out over the city. "I don't expect you to make a decision now. Take your time. But remember, you're not alone anymore." Sarah felt a chill run through her as the words sank in. The man who sat across from her was offering her something far greater than she could comprehend. And somehow, she knew that walking away would never be an option again. Sarah sat in her small apartment, the evening stretching out before her like a long, uncertain road. Her children were asleep in the next room, their soft breathing a reminder of why she was still fighting. But tonight, she couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed, something she couldn't control. The conversation with Jack Romano had left her feeling uneasy, yet strangely captivated. His words echoed in her mind, his calm, confident voice offering protection, a life she could never have imagined. Protection from what? She didn't know. And yet, deep down, she understood that the kind of life he lived was far beyond anything she had ever known. The world he had introduced her to was a world she had no place in, yet somehow, it seemed to be drawing her in, bit by bit. The card he had given her still sat on the table in front of her, a stark reminder of the choice she was facing. She couldn't deny that part of her wanted to take his offer. Her life had been nothing but survival, and the idea of someone offering her a way out was tempting. But at what cost? What kind of world would she be entering? Could she ever be truly free if she became part of Jack's world? As she pondered these questions, her phone buzzed on the table. She picked it up, hesitating for a moment before checking the message. It was from an unknown number, but the message was simple. "I'll be waiting for your call, Sarah. Don't make me wait too long." It was from Jack. Her heart skipped a beat as she stared at the message, the weight of the decision settling heavily in her chest. She had no idea what he wanted from her, but he was waiting for her to make the first move. She could feel the tension building inside her, the pull of something powerful, something dangerous. But she wasn't ready to make a decision yet. She wasn't ready to give in. The world Jack was offering her was full of promises, but also full of uncertainty. Could she trust him? Could she trust herself? It was too much to figure out all at once. As she sat there, lost in thought, her children's laughter echoed from the other room, grounding her once more in the reality of her life. She had to protect them. She had to make sure they were safe. That was all that mattered. But was it possible to protect them and stay true to herself in the world Jack had invited her into? She couldn't answer that yet. She had to think. She had to make a choice. As the night wore on, Sarah found herself unable to sleep, her mind racing with the weight of the decision that lay ahead. She could feel Jack's presence in every corner of the apartment, a reminder that his world was now a part of hers. A part she couldn't escape, no matter how hard she tried. She looked at the phone again, her finger hovering over the call button. What was she waiting for? She wasn't sure. But one thing was clear. Her life, the life she had fought so hard to build, was about to change forever. And no matter what choice she made, she knew she would never be the same again. The morning light streamed through the curtains, casting soft shadows across Sarah's living room. The city outside buzzed with its usual energy, but inside, everything felt eerily still. Sarah hadn't slept much, her mind racing all night with thoughts of Jack and the offer he had made. The weight of the decision had settled heavily on her chest, and now, as she sat at the kitchen table, she felt the weight of it even more. Her children were still asleep in their rooms, their quiet presence a reminder of what she had to protect. But the truth was, she had no idea how to protect them from a world she didn't understand. Jack's world. The phone sat on the table in front of her, the message still fresh in her mind. "I'll be waiting for your call." She could feel the pull of it, the allure of a life beyond the struggles of her everyday existence. Protection, security, a way out. It sounded so simple, so tempting. But nothing in Jack's world could ever be that simple. She had been around long enough to know that nothing came without a price. And she didn't want to pay that price. Not for herself. Not for her children. Yet, as she sat there, lost in thought, she knew she couldn't avoid the truth for much longer. The truth was that she was already in this world, whether she liked it or not. She had been drawn into it the moment Jack had sent the black roses, the moment he had noticed her. She was part of something bigger now, something dangerous, and she couldn't simply walk away. But what was the right choice? She looked at the phone again, her finger hovering over the call button. She could call him. She could take the offer, step into his world, and let him protect her, take care of everything. Or she could walk away, pretend none of this had ever happened, and try to go back to the life she knew. But that life, the one she had been clinging to so desperately, was already slipping away. Jack had made sure of that. The sound of her children waking up broke her thoughts. She stood up quickly, pushing the phone to the side, trying to focus on the moment. She couldn't think about this right now, not while they were awake. She had to be their mother, their protector, the one person they could always rely on. As the day went on, Sarah tried to distract herself, but the nagging thought of Jack's offer remained. She couldn't deny that part of her wanted to take the easy way out, to let someone else take control, to not have to fight every day to survive. But another part of her, the part that had always kept her going, pushed back against the idea. She wasn't weak. She didn't need someone else to fix her life. She would find her own way. But deep down, she knew the world she had been living in was crumbling. And soon, she would have to make a choice. She could continue struggling on her own, or she could accept Jack's offer and step into a world she didn't understand. Either way, the world she knew was gone, and there was no turning back. The next day, Sarah found herself standing outside Jack Romano's mansion, her breath caught in her chest as she stared up at the imposing gates. The decision had been made, but it didn't feel like it. She was still in shock, still unsure of what she was doing here. She had promised herself she wouldn't fall into Jack's world, but it was too late now. She had already made the call. The sound of the gate opening startled her, and before she could take a step, the car that had brought her here pulled up, and the driver, a silent man in a suit, stepped out to open the door. His gaze was blank, unreadable. "Mr. Romano is expecting you," he said with a nod. Sarah hesitated for a moment before stepping into the car. As they drove deeper into the estate, she noticed the contrast between her old life and this new, foreign world. The houses they passed were massive, pristine, standing as symbols of wealth and power. She couldn't help but feel out of place, like she didn't belong. The driver turned onto a long, winding driveway, lined with towering trees. Finally, the car came to a stop in front of a grand building. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest as she stepped out and walked toward the entrance. The door opened before she could knock, and there, standing in the doorway, was Jack Romano himself. He looked even more intimidating up close, his sharp features framed by the soft glow of the chandelier inside. His eyes softened as they met hers, but there was still a chill in his gaze. "Welcome, Sarah," he said, his voice smooth, almost soothing. "I'm glad you decided to come." Sarah swallowed, trying to steady her nerves. "I didn't have much of a choice," she replied, her voice firm despite the flutter of anxiety in her stomach. Jack smiled slightly, but it wasn't a reassuring smile. It was a smile that suggested he knew something she didn't. "Everyone always has a choice," he said, stepping aside to let her in. As she walked through the doorway, Sarah was struck by the luxury of the place. It was nothing like the apartment she had been struggling to keep afloat. Everything in this mansion screamed power, elegance, and money. The marble floors, the golden chandeliers, the priceless artwork on the walls. She felt small, insignificant. Jack led her into a spacious living room, his hand gently guiding her toward the sofa. "Please, make yourself comfortable," he said, his tone polite but commanding. As she sat down, she couldn't help but notice how carefully he was watching her. His eyes never left her face, studying her every movement. It was as if he was trying to read her mind, to figure her out. Sarah crossed her arms over her chest, trying to hide how nervous she felt. "What exactly is it that you want from me, Jack?" she asked, her voice steady, though the question had been on her mind since the moment he had first made contact. Jack's gaze didn't waver. "I want to help you, Sarah," he said, his voice smooth and persuasive. "I can offer you a life you've never known. Protection, security, a future for you and your children." Sarah leaned back slightly, her eyes narrowing as she processed his words. "And what do you want in return?" Jack smiled again, but this time it was softer, almost compassionate. "What I want is simple," he said. "I want your trust. I want you to trust me enough to let me help you, to let me take care of you and your family. Sarah hesitated, the weight of his words settling on her like a heavy burden. She had lived her whole life without depending on anyone, never asking for help, never relying on anyone but herself. But now, here she was, in a room with a man who seemed to be offering everything she had ever needed. Was it too good to be true? She didn't know, but she had to know more. What kind of help? She asked, her voice quieter now, filled with uncertainty. Jack leaned forward slightly, his eyes intense, but still calm. Everything, Sarah, he said, his voice low and persuasive. Whatever you need, I can provide it. You'll never have to worry again. Your children will have everything they need, and you will have a life beyond survival. Sarah's heart raced, the thought of it all, of finally having security, of not having to struggle every day, was almost too much to process. But the fear still lingered, the fear of what she might be giving up in exchange. She wasn't sure if she could trust him. But in that moment, she realized she was already making her choice. I don't know what to say, she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. Jack's smile softened as he stood up, extending his hand to her. You don't have to say anything right now, he said, his tone gentle. Just know that I'm here for you, whenever you're ready. Sarah looked at his hand for a moment before slowly reaching out and taking it. She didn't know where this would lead, but she knew one thing for sure. Her life was never going to be the same. Sarah had barely slept that night, her mind too busy to rest. The decision she had made earlier in the day now felt heavier, like a weight pressing on her chest. She sat by her window, looking out at the city below. The neon lights flickered in the distance, a stark contrast to the stillness inside her apartment. Her children were asleep, safe for now, but she couldn't shake the feeling that her life was on the verge of something she wasn't sure she was ready for. Jack's world was a place she had never imagined stepping into, and yet, here she was, tangled in it, not sure of what she was walking into. The phone sat on the table beside her, the invitation to call Jack still there, waiting for her. She didn't know if she could go through with it. Could she really leave behind the life she had fought so hard for? Could she really trust Jack? She didn't know the answer. She only knew that the security he offered was tempting, that it made everything else seem so much easier. But Sarah wasn't someone who liked to depend on others. She had spent her entire life taking care of herself and her children, and now, she was supposed to rely on a man like Jack Romano. She wasn't sure she could, and yet, something told her she had no other choice. The decision was hers to make, but it felt like she was being pulled in a direction she couldn't control. She had thought about calling him again, but something kept holding her back. The reality of it all seemed too much, too overwhelming. She wanted to do what was best for her children, but she wasn't sure if this was the right path. The phone buzzed, cutting through the silence. It was a message from Jack. I'm here when you're ready, Sarah. No pressure. Just know that I'm offering you a way out, a way to a better life. His words were calm, reassuring, and yet they only added to the weight she was already feeling. She knew what he was offering, but was it really a better life? Could it really be what she needed? She was about to pick up the phone when her son's voice echoed from the next room. Mom. He was awake, and just like that, the world outside her apartment seemed to shrink back. Her focus shifted to him, to the life she had been trying to protect. Whatever decisions she made, they had to be for him, for her daughter. She stood up and walked into their room, her children's faces still soft with sleep. Her son looked up at her, his eyes bright with curiosity. Are you okay, Mom? He asked softly. Sarah smiled, brushing his hair out of his eyes. I'm fine, baby. Just tired, she said, her voice steady. But inside, everything was in turmoil. She kissed his forehead and pulled the blanket up around him before returning to her own thoughts. The choice was hers to make. But how could she choose when everything felt so uncertain? What was the right path for her? The phone sat on the table, and she finally reached for it. Her fingers hovered over the call button as her heart raced. This was it. This was the moment. She could take the step into Jack's world, take the protection he offered, or she could turn away, keep fighting, and keep living the life she had always known. But nothing would ever be the same again. She knew that. With a deep breath, she pressed the button. It was time to make the call.